Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for August 2nd of 2023, and currently there's a slight risk for central Missouri with a marginal threat that goes into southern Illinois and western Kentucky. This is going to be the primary focus for today's forecast. However, there are three other marginal threats, one for Utah into northern Arizona, as well as one across eastern Colorado and western Kentucky into parts of Nebraska right here. And a marginal threat for northern Wisconsin and parts of eastern Minnesota and the Michigan Peninsula. I likely will not cover these three marginal threats at all in today's forecast. I likely will be focusing on mainly the slight risk for today. Our threats for today do include a 2% tornado threat for the slight risk across central Missouri, as well as a 15% wind threat with a 5% around that, and a 5% for all three marginal threats. As for hail, there is a 15% with a 5% around that for central Missouri, as well as a 5% hail threat for the northern marginal threat in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Before I do get into our pivotal weather models, I do want to touch on what might be the main and most severe threat of our severe weather for today. We do have a moderate threat issued for that slight risk region for eastern Missouri into parts of western Illinois. This is going to be our main threat for our severe weather. We are going to see the possibility of lots of flash flooding in this region. So if you live in any low-lying areas, make sure you are looking out for any flash flood warnings, as we could get a large amounts of rainfall for this region in particular. Taking a look at our pivotal weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars, you can see, focusing on the slight risk region, we do have a little bit of a shortwave trough with also some outflow boundaries that should be mixed in from the day prior. This shortwave trough is going to be the main triggering factor for severe weather development across the region in particular, as well as allow for the possibility of somewhat elongated photographs and allow for the possibility of some small to medium hail across the region. And then for the rest of the marginal threats, mainly focusing on Utah and Arizona, you see a very weak shortwave trough that is expected to round the western side of that high pressure system across Texas. This is increasing temperatures a ton across Texas to above 100 degrees. I did post a weekly overlook a few weeks back about the intense temperatures that could be possible across Texas this week and last week, and maybe even next week as well. Do keep in mind, if you live in this region, please stay temperature alert for the time being, as temperatures could get extremely high in the region. However, focusing on the Utah and Arizona marginal threats, you can see, again, that very weak shortwave trough that is expected to round the base of that western side of that high pressure system. That should be the main triggering factor for severe weather development across the Utah and Arizona region. And then taking a look at the triggering factors for the marginal threat in the Minnesota and Wisconsin marginal threat, you can see that there is that shortwave trough with that low pressure system in Canada that is expected to move across the region. You can see it is fairly strong, so it should allow for some elongated photographs and the possibility of some small to medium hail across that region as well. And then taking a look at our dew points for the slight region in particular, you can see that we do have some fairly strong dew points that are in place. We have dew points that are very, very strong, dew points that are reaching the mid and upper 70s. Even if we don't have strong lapse rates, we could definitely see the possibility of some fairly strong instability associated with these dew points. We could see the possibility of Cape values that do reach the 3000s, maybe even the 4000s, if we do have some strong lapse rates. And how this will contribute to our excessive rainfall is that a very strong humidity and the possibility of some fairly strong precipitable water in the atmosphere that is going to contribute two and two together to allow for the possibility of tons of rainfall across this region. Taking a look at our lapse rates, you can see that we don't really have all that strong lapse rates in the region. We do have lapse rates that are mostly going to be in the 6s, the mid 6s, and possibly the upper 6s, and mostly in the 5s. So we aren't going to have too strong lapse rates, and it's going to decrease our hail potential possibly. What this means for our hail potential is that it's going to make hail development harder to do, as our hail development layer is higher up in the atmosphere and it isn't lower down closer to the ground to be able to reach easier with a strong updraft from strong instability. With weak lapse rates, strong instability will have to work much harder to loft those rain particles and allow for hail development. However, we should see some very, very strong instability with very strong dew points in the regions, so lapse rates shouldn't be too much of a problem for hail development. Before we get into our instability, I do want to take a look at our precipitable water that we have in the atmosphere and how it might entail our flash flooding potential, you can see that we do have very strong values in that region. We have precipitable water values that are reaching the 2.50s, and even the 2.6s and 7s and 8s in some regions. That is definitely going to allow for the possibility of a huge flash flooding potential, and really allow for the possibility of tons of rainfall across this region. Again, if you live in this region and you live in low-lying areas, please make sure you're watching out for any flash flood warnings, as they are definitely possible across this afternoon. Taking a look at our instability, you can see that we are expected to have some fairly strong Cape values across the region. Cape values that are reaching the upper and mid 3000s and even the mid to low 4000s. Despite our weak collapse rates, we could definitely see the possibility of small to medium hail with our elongated hodographs and our strong mid-level flow aloft. We definitely, again, see the possibility of some small to medium hail. And if we have strong storm relative helicity or directional shear, we could see the possibility of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes across this region. And we could also see the possibility of some fairly strong damaging outflow gusts across this region as well. And then taking a look at our bulk shear or our speed shear, you can see, focusing on the slight risk region and how this might entail our hail potential, you can see that we do have some fairly strong speed shear in place. We do have speed shear values that are expected to be in the 50 knots. This is definitely going to allow for the possibility of some elongated hodographs and the possibility of some small to medium hail across the region with our strong instability. However, do keep in mind that because this is bulk shear, some of this could be some storm relative helicity, and it may not all be our speed shear. It is kind of hard to tell when we're looking at bulk shear if it is speed shear or if it is directional shear. However, half of this could be speed shear, half of this could be directional shear, so we could mostly be seeing some 30 knots speed shear. So this could allow for the possibility of some small to medium hail across this region. And then taking a look at our storm relative helicity. So to summarize, that might have been a little bit complicated to follow. Strong storm relative helicity or directional shear in place after morning time storms is going to allow for the possibility of that 2% tornado threat. We might get a increased tornado potential by that 430 SBC outlook when that rolls around, with very strong directional shear in place, and very strong and very prominent low-level curvature in the hodographs. However, after morning time storms, we do have very strong convective inhibition, so we may not be able to support a 5% tornado threat, and at most a 2% tornado threat. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas that I covered for severe weather development for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.